Be'ez Hashem Yisborach, we begin Perek Shlishi, the third chapter in the Rambam Hilchos Berachos Laws of Blessing, Safe Have the Book of Love, which we continue the theme of the previous parak discussing that of grain, as in this parak we discussed regarding food items made out of grain, and depending on the circumstance of what the bracha is going to be. As Rambam begins halacha alf, qualifying first what's the 5 types of grain. Chamisha minimhim, there are 5 types of species. Hachitin wheat, basar barley, vakusmin spelt, v'shabel shul and oats, v'shipon and rye. And these are 5 types of grain. Hakusmin, now spelt, is meminachitin, is from the same family as wheat. B'shabel shul v'shipon, and regarding oat and rye, meminasarm is from the same category as barley. V'chamisha mina elu, and these 5 types, kishem shibon, when they're in their stalks, nikram tevu b'chamakim, they're always called the word tevua. V'achash adashin b'zaydanaisim, and after that they're threshed and they're winnowed, then nikram dagan, they're called dagan. Now when you grind them, v'lashon es kimchan, and you mush together their flour with water. V'oivnaisim, and you bake it, nikram pas, that's called bread. Now, bread that's made one of these 5, that's what's called in general bread, without any secondary name, because there's other types of bread. There's cornbread and there's rice bread, and all those. Those are not what we mean when we say bread to have these halachas. We're talking about specifically these 5 without any secondary names to it. Halacha Beis discusses the bracha of dagan, kemach, pas, all these different things. So eichel pas, somebody eats bread, what we described, the last of the stages. You have to make a blessing before you eat it. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed Hashem our God, King of the world, hamitzi lechem ha'aretz, takes bread out from the ground. Lachra, and after you finish eating, is the arba brachas, is the 4 blessings we know as berachas hamazon. Achol dagan shalok k'maishu. Now let's say you eat, we describe as dagan. Dagan is after it was grinded and it was turned into the process after winnowing, then it's dagan. So you eat dagan that's shalok k'maishu, that's cooked as it is, meaning without removing the husks, without splitting it into 2. So then you make a blessing before it because it's a grain, it's from the ground. You make a blessing, it's a fruit of the ground. And afterwards you make a bar nefashos rabbis that he makes many different creations, etc., which is the more generic blessing on things like shahakal. Ochel kemach, if you ate flour, so then the hair wasn't cooked. It was actually pulverized, which actually is the next step, but it's actually worse off. So it's like goes down before it goes back up to hamaitzi. Make a blessing before shahakal, which are more generic, that hakal shakal, everything was made of his word. Afterwards, you make a bar nefashos rabbis, like when you eat it, the cooked grain. Halacha gimel. Kemach shel echad mechamishes aminim. The flour of one of these 5 types of grain, sheshlakuhu, which was cooked, ve'edav b'mayim, it was mixed with water. Other types of liquids. If it was thick, that's fit to eat and to chew. So first make a blessing before it. Blessed he who creates different types of food. At the end you make ala michav, what's called bracha achas min shalish, which in the bridge type of berachas hamazon on what keeps us alive and on the sustenance. Now, if it was soft, meaning it's liquidy, that's fit to drink, then you make a blessing before shahakal, and afterwards, burn the first rabbis that he creates many different types of souls and entities. Halacha regarding what's known as ma'aseh kedera, a type of a porridge. So kemach shel echad mechamishes aminim, the flour of one of the 5 types of species, which was cooked in a pot, whether by itself, whether it was mixed with other things. For example, levivos, let's say like dumplings, which is a cakey flour that's mixed in boiled water and then with oil, or similar types of things. Or let's say take grain that's split, like kasashai, or it's grinded, pounded, and it's cooked in a pot. For example, harifes, groats, which groats are hulled wheat and that's crushed, or vegetas, which are getas hakarmel, which are grits, which is wheat that's grinded, that's crushed, and it's some types of things. This is what's called cooked dishes, or any types of cooked dish that you mixed in the 5 types of grain as one of the ingredients, bein kemach, bein pas, whether flour, whether bread, but you made this dish. Then before you eat it, you make the bracha that he makes different types of food. Halacha, now there is the concept of ikr and tafel, primary and secondary. The medrum, when we say this, that any cooked dish that you mix in the 5 types of grain, you can make a berman rezainas. When this species, one of the wheat, barley, whatever it is, was significant to the person in the dish. The lohaya tefillah wasn't just secondary. But if one of the 5 types of grain that was mixed was only tefillah was secondary, then you're only going to make the blessing on the primary ingredient. It's going to exempt the secondary, even if it's one of the 5 types of grains. And this is a rule regarding blessings. Whatever's primary has something secondary with it. You make a blessing on the primary, and you exempt the secondary. Whether the secondary was mixed together with the primary, whether it was not mixed together. As Rambam explains these 2 types. What's a secondary that's mixed together? Going lefes, for example, you have turnips, a krub, or cabbage, a bish that was cooked. The erev by kemach shel echem mechamesh minim. Now, and you mix together flour of one of these 5 types, but it was only kedei ledapka, just to keep it together, that it shouldn't just fall apart. So, you're not going to make the blessing by min mezainis. Shel lefes the primary is the turnip. The kim chetfela, the flour is just to keep it together. So, therefore, you wouldn't make a bracha on the flour. Because you're called davish or anything that you're mixing it just to keep to hold things together, or just to give a smell, or just to give a color to the dish. That's considered secondary. But let's say you mixed it together to give a taste into the mixture. Then we're going to say the one of the 5 grains will be the primary, and you would make a mezainis. Therefore, different types of honeys. Would they cook the honey? And they put in the fat of the wheat just as an emulsifier, as to keep things connected. To make these types of sweets, these candies. You're not going to make a bracha on the candy. The primary is the honey. The wheat ingredient is just to keep it together. And therefore it's a tuffle that's mu'ureves, that's mixed. Now, halacha zayin, what's a secondary thing that's not even mixed together? Someone had to eat a salted piece of fish, a herring, and they ate bread with it. Now, the reason why I ate the bread was that the salt shouldn't harm his throat and his tongue. It was too sharp. He's only going to make the blessing on the salted fish. That will exempt the bread. Because the bread is secondary to it. If there's anything similar like that, you only make a bracha on the ikr, even though the tafel is more chashuv because it's secondary. Regarding crumbled bread. So hapas shapasas oisa pitim. Regarding bread that was crumbled into small pieces. Ubishla b'gedein was cooked in the pot, or lasha b'marik, or is kneaded into a soup. So imyesh b'basisin kisais. If the crumbs are the size of an olive, which is the significant measurement, or you could recognize that it's bread. It didn't lose its form. So then you will make the blessing before you eat that thing, hamaitzi, which is on the bread that's inside of it, which is the primary and it exempts everything else. But if it does not have the size of an olive, or it lost the whole form of the bread when it was cooked together, then you're only going to make the blessing before you eat it. Mezainis, yeah, it's there to give taste. It gets its primacy, but it will only be a mezainis. It won't be that of the bracha of hamaitzi lechem and aretz. Lacha test regarding establishing a meal, what's called kaveh suda, and also regarding what's a unique situation called pasa b'bakisnin. It is bread, but it's a certain type. So isa shenefes bakarka, regarding dough that was baked on the ground, like the Arabs, who dwell in the deserts, the way they bake, it doesn't have the form of bread. Bread has a certain form. It's just like poured out on the ground, and it's baked that way. So only going to make a bracha on that. Now, but if you establish your meal on that, then it will have the halacha of hamaitzi lechem and aretz. So to have a dough that was kneaded with honey, or with oil, or with milk, or you mixed in different types of spices, and you baked it. This is what's called pas haba'a b'kisanin, bread that comes with pockets. Meaning the way that you have these pockets that you put in sugar or chocolate or nuts or whatever it is inside of it. After although it's bread really, you're going to make a blessing and it only boy mean the mezainis. The reason for that is because people don't usually make a meal on these types of cookies, and therefore it only will have the bracha of mezainis. Now, but if you make your meal on this item, then you will have the bracha, which is unique for the bread type of meal, which is a meal type of food, which is hamaitzi, even on those cookies and those cakes. Halacha Yud. Now, regarding the unique halacha of rice. So, regarding rice that was cooked, in the past you make bread, rice bread out of it. But initially you make the bracha b'yimin mezainis, because it gives sustenance. But at the end, only burn the fashas rabbis, which is unlike everything else is mezainis you make alamicha. Here it's burn the fash. As long as it's not mixed with something else, it's only rice, because rice is not, like we said regarding the 5 types of grain that you also make a mezainis, that it's the most chashav in the taribis in the mixture, you'll always make a mezainis. No. Here, it's only rice on itself, but it will not be the primary if it's mixed with other things. Regarding millet bread, or pashal shar minikitness, or bread made out of other types of beans and legumes, the metchil mavarch shakal, at the beginning, since not the thing itself, it lost its form, you'll make the generic shahakal near bedvarim. Everything was made with his word. But then you make a bar in the rabbis that he created many different things. Look it out regarding the bracha chroina on mezainis, which is called the bracha achas mein shalas. It's like an abridged 3 blessings of Berachos Hamazon in one blessing. So anything that you initially make on it before you eat it, the bracha b'meitzi. If you make the bracha after it at the end, Berachos Hamazon considered the benching in its order, which are the arba brachas, the 4 distinct blessings. But anything that initially make on it a bracha b'meitzi, which is a step lower than the meal food of bread, then you make at the end afterward bracha achas mein shalos, one blessing that includes all these 3. And the only exception, like we said, is chutz min ha'aretz, except for rice, that even though you make a bracha ben mezainis, you're only going to make a bracha ben nefashas afterward. When we say this, that if you make a bracha before it, you're going to make a certain bracha after it, if you eat the size of an olive or more, but if you eat less than the size of an olive, whether from bread, whether from other types of foods, or you drink less than a quarter of a loig of that of the beverage, whether it's wine, whether some other beverage, that be between 3.3, 3.1, and 5.3, whatever it is, different types of measurements of the quarter of a loig, then initially, before you eat, you will make the blessing that's appropriate for that type of food. But at the end, you won't make any blessing at all. You won't make a bracha chreina if it has less than the measurement. This is the blessing that's one, but it's really a combination of the 3 of Berachos Hamazon. Is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, blessed are you Hashem our God, King of the world, ala michya v'kakala, on the life-giving and on the sustenance, which that correlates to bracha b'san sakoil. And on the expansive and the good and the desirable land, that you want to that you bequeath to our fathers, that correlates to the bracha of Noidilcha, of the Aretz, Valamazon. And then Rachem Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem have mercy al Yisrael Mecha, Val Yishleim Redecha, on your Jewish people and on your city Yerushalayim, Val Tzim Mishkan Kvedecha, and on Tzion, your honorable dwelling, which that correlates to the 3rd bracha, Birchas Bain Yerushalayim. Val bring us inside of it, B'samchin B'vinina, and have us be glad with its building, and we will bless you on it in holiness and with purity. Baruch Atah Hashem, bless you Hashem, ala Aretz Val Michya, on the land and on the food. Now we're going to Shabbos and Yom Tiv, which you have to add on, as we said by Berachos Hamazon. You say in this blessing, including it, me'en kedusha, something that relates to the sanctity of that day. You say towards the end, and Yom Tiv say whatever Yom Tiv hazeh. Just like you mentioned, and you add on these ideas in that of the Berachos Hamazon after a bread meal.